3 meters. That's how far away the Filipino operator was standing. 3 meters from 8 highly trained U.S. Navy SEALs equipped with night vision, thermal imaging, and state-of-the-art detection equipment. And not one of them saw him. Not one of them heard him. He had walked right through their security perimeter, stood there watching them for 5 full minutes, and then whispered 2 words that made their blood run cold. "You're dead." That moment in 1992 changed everything American Special Forces thought they knew about jungle warfare, and what happened next would shock the entire U.S. military establishment. Fort Magsaysay, Nueva Ecija, Philippines. The heat hits you like a physical wall, 95% humidity, 38 degrees Celsius in the shade, except there is no shade in the staging area. American Navy SEALs, some of the most elite warriors on the planet, were preparing for joint exercises with their Filipino counterparts. They'd come expecting to teach. They were about to become students. Lieutenant Commander Jack Morrison had been a Navy SEAL for 12 years. Combat deployments in the Middle East, training missions in South America, counter-terrorism operations that remain classified to this day. His team of 8 operators represented some of the best special operations capabilities in the world. They had the latest equipment, GPS navigation systems that worked anywhere, satellite communications that could reach command from any location, night vision that turned darkness into daylight, and weapons that cost more than most people's houses. They were professionals. They were confident. They were about to be humbled. The joint exercise seemed straightforward on paper. 2 teams would infiltrate through 25 kilometers of Sierra Madre jungle, evade opposing forces, reach a target location, and extract. The terrain was brutal, some of the densest jungle in Southeast Asia, triple canopy forest that blocked satellite signals, leeches that dropped from trees, snakes that killed in minutes, insects carrying diseases you couldn't pronounce. The kind of environment that breaks unprepared soldiers. The Filipino team was led by Lieutenant Armando Cruz of NAVSOG, the Naval Special Operations Group. His team also had 8 operators, but their equipment looked like it came from a different era. Older rifles without advanced optics, basic compass navigation instead of GPS, no satellite communications. Their camouflage uniforms were faded and worn. Morrison looked at their gear and thought this would be a teaching opportunity. Show the Filipinos how modern special operations worked, share some tactical knowledge, maybe learn a few local tricks, standard military cooperation. Both teams entered the jungle from different points at dawn. The mission timeline was 72 hours. The Americans planned to complete it in 48 hours. Morrison's team moved tactically, using proper spacing, hand signals, covering their sectors. Everything by the book, exactly as they'd been trained at Fort Bragg and Coronado. After 4 hours of careful movement, they'd covered maybe 6 kilometers. The jungle was fighting them. Vines grabbed at their equipment. The heat was suffocating. Every step required effort. But they were SEALs. Discomfort was just another enemy to overcome. While the Filipino team had vanished. Within 30 minutes of entering the jungle, the American command post lost all tracking on the Filipino transponders. When U.S. commanders radioed the Filipino command asking if there was an equipment malfunction, the response was calm and almost amused. "No malfunction. They're doing what they do. Don't worry, you'll see them when they want to be seen." The Americans were confused. In modern military operations, you maintain communications, you track your assets. Losing radio contact wasn't tactical, it was unprofessional, or so they thought. By nightfall on day 1, Morrison's team had covered 12 kilometers. They established a tactical overnight position, rotating security watches, monitoring their assigned sectors with night vision and thermal imaging. Everything was professional, disciplined, textbook perfect. They were ahead of schedule and feeling confident about reaching the target location by late afternoon the next day. The jungle night was loud with insects and animal calls, but their perimeter was secure. 4 SEALs resting while 4 maintained watch. Nobody gets through a SEAL security perimeter. That's basic training. That's why they're the best. Around 2 in the morning, one of the sentries thought he detected movement, just a shadow, barely visible even with night vision. He keyed his radio to alert the team, following protocol exactly. Before he could speak, he felt warm breath on his neck and heard a voice whisper in perfect English, "You're dead. Your entire team is dead. I've been standing here for 5 minutes watching you." The American SEAL spun around so fast he nearly fell. Standing less than a meter away was Lieutenant Cruz. The Filipino operator wasn't using any technology, no night vision, no thermal gear, just his eyes, his training, and abilities that seemed impossible. The American sentry hadn't heard a footstep, hadn't seen movement. His night vision hadn't detected body heat. Cruz had walked through their security perimeter, observed them for 5 full minutes, and could have killed any of them. The American was using $20,000 worth of detection equipment. Cruz was using skills that cost nothing but took years to develop. Morrison immediately put the entire team on full alert. They scanned the perimeter with every piece of technology they had. Thermal imaging showed nothing. Night vision revealed only jungle. Audio sensors detected normal forest sounds. Cruz had disappeared as completely as he'd appeared, gone like a ghost. Morrison's team spent the rest of the night on full alert, and none of them saw or heard anything else unusual. But the message had been delivered. Everything they thought they knew about jungle operations had just been challenged. At sunrise, Morrison made a decision that would later be documented in U.S. Special Operations training literature. He radioed back to American Command, "We need to stop treating this as a training exercise and start treating it as a learning opportunity. These Filipino operators know something we don't. We need to understand what it is." Command agreed and modified the mission parameters. Here's what the Americans didn't know at that point. The Filipino team had already completed the entire mission. They'd covered 25 kilometers of brutal jungle terrain in less than 20 hours. They'd reached the target location, established defensive positions, and were now just waiting. When the American command post finally got confirmation of this from Filipino command, they initially thought it was a mistake or a communications error. There was no way any team could move that fast through that terrain while maintaining tactical security and avoiding detection. The Filipino commanders just smiled and said, "Come see for yourselves." It took Morrison's team another full day to reach the target location. When they finally arrived, exhausted and impressed they'd made it in 42 hours, the Filipino team was already there. They weren't just there, they were comfortable. They'd built shelters from jungle materials that were invisible from 3 meters away. They'd established a water collection system. They'd even caught and cooked food. They looked like they'd been camping, not conducting special operations, but their defensive positions were flawless. Any approach to their location would have been detected and neutralized. Morrison approached Cruz. He didn't make excuses, didn't try to save face. He just asked, "How? How did you move that fast? How did you get through our perimeter without being detected? How are you doing any of this?" Cruz smiled that same knowing smile and said something that would change American Special Operations training. "This is our home. We don't fight the jungle. We become part of it. You brought your city to the jungle. That's why you struggled. Let us show you the difference." What happened over the next 2 weeks was unprecedented in U.S. military history. American Navy SEALs, warriors who train foreign militaries around the world, asked Filipino operators to train them. Not advise, not consult, train. The Filipinos agreed, and what followed was an education that would be documented, studied, and incorporated into American Special Operations doctrine. Lesson 1 was movement. The Americans had been moving through the jungle like they moved through any terrain. They pushed vegetation aside. They stepped over obstacles. They used force to go where they wanted to go. It was human against environment, and in the jungle, the environment was winning. The Filipinos taught them something completely different. They didn't fight the jungle. They read it. They found paths that already existed. They moved with the terrain's natural flow rather than against it. Cruz demonstrated. He moved 50 meters through vegetation so dense you couldn't see 3 meters ahead. The Americans watched and listened with every sense heightened. They heard nothing. No branches breaking, no leaves rustling, no footsteps. When Cruz reached his position, he wasn't breathing hard. He wasn't scratched or bleeding. He wasn't fighting. He was flowing. Then Morrison tried the same route. Every step made noise. Branches snapped back and hit him. Vines caught his equipment. By the time he covered 50 meters, he was breathing hard, bleeding from scratches and utterly frustrated. "You're thinking like a seal," Cruz explained. "That works everywhere else. In the jungle, you need to think like the jungle. Watch." He showed them how to read vegetation patterns, which plants indicated easy passage and which indicated obstacles, how to place your feet to minimize sound and maximize stability, how to move through vegetation instead of pushing it. It seemed simple in concept, but required complete retraining of instincts developed over years. Lesson 2 was navigation. American operators relied on GPS and compasses, technology that worked everywhere. Except in the jungle, GPS signals were blocked by the triple canopy. Compass bearings didn't account for the reality that straight line travel was impossible. The Filipinos used something different. They read the environment. Tree growth patterns indicated direction, as trees leaned towards sunlight. Water flow revealed elevation changes. Certain insects appeared at specific times, acting as biological clocks. The jungle itself was their navigation system. When American GPS units failed under the dense canopy, something that happened regularly, they struggled with dead reckoning and map reading. The Filipinos never struggled. They always knew exactly where they were because they were reading the jungle like Americans read street signs. Cruz could determine north-south orientation within 5 degrees just by looking at moss growth and tree lean. He could estimate time within 15 minutes by observing insect activity. He could find water by following the behavior of certain birds. This wasn't primitive knowledge. This was sophisticated environmental awareness that modern technology couldn't replicate. Lesson 3 fundamentally changed how Americans thought about camouflage. The U.S. military spends millions developing camouflage patterns, laboratory testing, computer modeling, patterns designed to break up human silhouettes in various environments. The Americans wore the latest jungle camouflage, scientifically designed to blend with tropical environments. The Filipinos taught them it wasn't enough, not even close. Cruz demonstrated something that seemed almost magical. He told Morrison and his team to watch him carefully as he moved 15 meters into the jungle. All 8 Americans focused on him. Cruz applied mud to his exposed skin. He attached natural vegetation to his uniform. He moved into position and went completely still. Then he said, "Find me." The Americans scanned the area. They used their optics. They used their training. They couldn't find him. Cruz was 15 meters away, directly in their line of sight, and 8 highly trained Navy SEALs couldn't locate him. After 5 minutes, Cruz stood up. He'd been there the entire time, visible but invisible. The lesson was profound. Modern camouflage breaks up your outline, but you're still identifiable as human. Natural camouflage makes you part of the environment. The mud eliminated the reflective quality of human skin that stands out in jungle lighting. The vegetation made you 3-dimensional like your surroundings, instead of 2-dimensional like a human form. The stillness meant you moved like vegetation moves with the wind, not like humans move. It was the difference between hiding in the jungle and being the jungle. Lesson 4 was water, crucial in tropical operations. The Americans carried water purification systems, heavy, effective tablets and filters that could make any water safe. The Filipinos showed them how to find naturally clean water sources, how to use bamboo as both container and natural filter, how to recognize which streams were safe without technological testing. This was indigenous knowledge combined with military application, passed down through generations of Filipino warriors. Lesson 5 was food procurement. In extended jungle operations, you can't carry enough food. You must supplement from the environment. Americans knew this theoretically. The Filipinos lived it. They showed Americans which plants were edible and how to prepare them, how to trap small game efficiently with materials found in the jungle, how to fish in jungle streams without commercial equipment. More importantly, they taught what to avoid, which plants and insects were toxic or dangerous. This knowledge could mean the difference between mission success and medical evacuation. But the most important lesson wasn't tactical or technical, it was philosophical. One evening, sitting around a small fire, Morrison asked crews, "How do you train for this? What makes Filipino operators so effective in the jungle?" Cruz's answer has been quoted in multiple U.S. military training programs. "We don't train for the jungle, we train in the jungle. Americans practice for war, we prepare for survival. Different mindset, different results." Cruz explained the difference. American SEAL training is exceptional at creating warriors who can operate anywhere: desert, mountain, urban, maritime, jungle, all covered comprehensively. It's generalist training that produces adaptable operators. Filipino NAVSOG training is specialist. 90% of Philippine territory is jungle or ocean. That's where they'll fight. That's where they train. Not in controlled environments or designated training areas. They train in actual combat zones where real insurgent operations happen. The training areas used by NAVSOG aren't safe training facilities. They're areas with active threats. The navigation mistakes in training have real consequences. You don't learn jungle warfare in a classroom. You don't master it on a groomed training course. You learn it where one mistake means you die. That creates a different level of capability. American SEALs train to operate in the jungle. Filipino operators train to live in it. The difference is everything. Over 2 weeks, Morrison's team transformed. They abandoned some technology dependence. They learned to read the environment as a primary navigation tool. They moved quieter. They blended better. They understood that the jungle wasn't an enemy to overcome, but an ally to embrace. Morrison wrote in his after-action report something that made waves through SEAL Command. "We arrived believing we were training Filipino forces. We left having received the best jungle warfare education available anywhere in the world. Filipino NAVSOG operators are not just competent in jungle environments, they are superior to any force we have encountered, including our own." Word spread rapidly through the U.S. Navy SEAL community. Within a year, jungle warfare training programs were being revised based on Filipino techniques. Filipino instructors were being invited to U.S. bases to teach American operators. Joint training exercises with NAVSOG became highly competitive assignments that SEALs requested specifically. The students had truly become the teachers. Here's what makes this story even more remarkable. The Filipinos weren't trying to prove superiority. They weren't competing. When Morrison thanked Cruz for the training, Cruz's response embodied Filipino culture and military professionalism. "We are brothers in arms. What we know, you should know. The enemy doesn't care about national pride. They only care about weakness. If teaching you makes you stronger, it makes all of us safer. Your victories are our victories. Your survival is our survival." Today, U.S. Special Operations Forces routinely train at Fort Magsaysay's Jungle Warfare School. It's considered one of the premier training locations worldwide. American, Australian, British, and Japanese Special Forces operators travel there specifically to learn from Filipino instructors. The techniques taught haven't changed much since 1992 because they're based on centuries of Filipino warrior tradition, refined through decades of actual combat operations. Filipino NAVSOG operators have served alongside American SEALs in some of the most difficult missions imaginable. In combined operations in Mindanao against terrorist groups, Filipino operators often take point positions. Not because Americans can't do it, but because in that specific environment, Filipinos can do it better. American commanders, the best in the world, are smart enough to put the best operator in the best position, regardless of nationality. The relationship between American Navy SEALs and Filipino NAVSOG is unique in international military cooperation. It's based on mutual respect earned through shared training and combat. American operators openly acknowledge that in jungle warfare, Filipinos are superior. Filipino operators openly acknowledge American advantages in certain technical operations and urban warfare. Instead of competition, there's collaboration. Instead of ego, there's effectiveness. That's what makes both forces better. Lieutenant Commander Morrison retired from the Navy in 2004 after 22 years of service. In his retirement speech at Coronado, he mentioned that 1992 training in the Philippines. I learned more about special operations in 2 weeks in the Philippine jungle than I did in years of previous training. Not because my previous training was inadequate, it was excellent, but because the Filipinos showed me that the best technology is meaningless if you don't understand the environment. They taught me that being elite isn't about having the best equipment, it's about having the best adaptation to your operational environment. Lieutenant Cruz retired in 2008. He became an instructor at the NAVSOG training facility, teaching the next generation of Filipino operators. His students now teach American SEALs. The cycle continues, strengthened by mutual respect and shared knowledge. Every time American operators arrive in the Philippines for jungle training, they arrive with humility. They know they're about to learn from masters. The jungle hasn't changed. It's still brutal, still unforgiving, still deadly to those who don't respect it. But understanding has changed. American special operators no longer see jungle warfare as conquering difficult terrain. They see it as becoming part of an ecosystem. That fundamental shift in thinking came directly from Filipino instructors who taught them that in the jungle, the quietest warrior is the most dangerous. The most invisible is the most deadly. The one who belongs is the one who survives. When foreign military analysts ask Filipino Special Forces commanders what makes NAVSOG so effective in jungle operations, the answer is always simple and always the same. It's our home. That's not a metaphor, it's reality. The Philippine archipelago is 70% forested or jungle terrain. Filipino operators don't train for jungle warfare, they train in their backyard. The same jungle where their grandfathers fought Japanese invaders in World War II, the same jungle where their fathers fought communist insurgents, the same jungle where they'll face tomorrow's threats. It's genetic memory combined with modern training, cultural identity fused with military excellence. The American SEALs who trained with Filipinos in 1992 went on to distinguished careers. Many served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Some commanded special operations units. Some became instructors themselves. But when you ask them about their most important training, many cite those 2 weeks in the Philippine jungle. Not because it was the hardest, though it was brutal. Not because it was the most technical, though they learned sophisticated skills, but because it fundamentally changed how they understood warfare and what it means to be truly elite. Today, if you visit Fort Magsaysay during joint exercises, you'll see something remarkable. American special operators, representatives of the most powerful military in human history, learning from Filipino instructors representing one of the smallest defense budgets in Asia. You'll hear American commanders deferring to Filipino expertise on jungle tactics. You'll witness one of the most extraordinary dynamics in modern military cooperation. The world's most powerful military learning from one of the smallest. Not out of obligation, not for political reasons, but because effectiveness matters more than ego, because survival matters more than pride, because warriors recognize other warriors regardless of nationality or resources. The jungle is still there, dense, hot, unforgiving, deadly. And somewhere in that jungle right now, Filipino NAVSOG operators are training, moving silently through vegetation that would stop others completely, becoming invisible in environments where others stand out, mastering terrain that breaks lesser warriors. And when the next group of American SEALs arrives for their rotation at Jungle Warfare School, they'll arrive as students, eager, humble, ready to learn from the best jungle warriors in the world. Because in the jungle, Filipino SEALs don't just operate, they dominate. Everyone who's trained with them knows it. Everyone who's fought alongside them has seen it. And now, everyone who trains in jungle warfare anywhere in the world benefits from Filipino knowledge, Filipino techniques, and Filipino philosophy that turned the students into teachers and changed special operations forever. That's the story they don't tell you in movies. That's the reality that makes professional warriors respect Philippine Special Forces. And that's why, when American SEALs talk about jungle warfare, they always mention the Filipinos who taught them how it's really done.